Hello everybody, it's Keith. Help support the Northeast scene and declare yourself a member today. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or your podcast medium of choice. Rate us and leave a review. Every little bit helps. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It has every podcast episode plus other exclusive content. Like and leave a comment. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at TheNEScene. Also, continue to write us at northeastscene@gmail.com. We want to share your experiences as well. And now, here's the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Northeast Scene Podcast. This is Keith.
And Tommy.
And we're back with a fresh new episode. And tonight on the show, Joseph Grillo of Garrison. Tommy, Garrison has a reissue of The Bend Before the Break coming out on Iodine Recordings. We're very excited to hear that. Joe also has a new band, Judas Knife. They're going to be playing their first show soon, so we're going to hear about that. And there's going to be many amusing anecdotes and stories and tales. That I can guarantee you.
I love it.
Yes. Folks, in a rare switch of events here tonight on the show, Tommy is shook.
Yo.
Tommy is stressed out, and I am not. And in caring relationship fashion, I have swooped in to be the calm and collected person and help Tommy through this trying time. Tommy, tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, so life has been hectic for a couple reasons, but mainly because I started back to school, and we have had, without saying numbers, we've had numerous COVID positive cases, and my school is officially shut down and going back to remote learning for the next 3 days at the least. So,
oh, it's only the next 3 days?
Yeah, so what they're doing is they are waiting for positive results or negative results, hopefully, from a handful of kids. They are also giving people some time to go home and then monitor their children to see if they exhibit any symptoms like, loss of smell or fever, sore throat, that kind of stuff, and allow them to get tested. So if they did contract it, they're able to stay home and quarantine and hopefully avoid any future infections. But I know that's unrealistic, but my night has been filled with traffic and parent phone calls who are absolutely 100% warranted in being like upset. Like they don't know what's going on, why it's going on, what's happening with their student. And I think as a parent, if I was in the same situation, I'd be calling people as well. So it is frustrating while I'm trying to make dinner and help the kids and unpack and honestly to set up for tomorrow's classes that I'm going to have in my basement. It's been a little trying, and Keith could hear it when I got on, and he said something to me. I said, "What's the funniest thing that's happened in the last 2 days?" And he told something that made me laugh, and I was like, you know what? Let me take some deep breaths, get my shit together, and do the show, because that's what this show is about. Think about this. We had shows where there was, 8 inches of snow outside, and you'd go see a fucking amazing band, and 30 people would be there. We powered through shit. That's what we do. So here we are.
Yeah, because this show is not only the cutting edge destination for bands new and old. This show is also the journey of our lives. I mean, think about everything we've been through since we started this show, Tommy.
Had a baby?
You had a baby?
Well, I didn't have one, but...
Oh, I'm sorry. Your wife had a baby. You participated in the birthing of a child.
Yeah.
We made the show weekly. The show happened. There was a worldwide pandemic, relationships, breakups, heartache, triumph. You never know what's going to happen. I could tell as soon as you logged on that something was wrong. It was just like the energy. I could feel it.
I actually, and this is me being 100% transparent, there was a part of me on the way home while I was sitting in traffic. It was like 4:45. I'm sitting in traffic on Route 1, and I was so mad. I was like, I just need to do something that's not show related, or try not to think about the show. And I was like, well, I'll just listen to music. Well, the music makes me think about the show. Like, that's what the show is fucking about. And then I was like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call somebody. They're not going to talk about music. So I rarely do this. I called my mom, and I was like, Mom, how you doing? She's like, I'm good. You know, we had a back and forth conversation about what she did today. I forgot she was at my house today. She watched my kids for a little bit. Kelly had a doctor's appointment. So she was like, oh, I love that I got to see the baby. And she started talking about the kids. And I was just like, you know what? This is all minuscule. All the things I'm upset about, the traffic in front of me, the parents, the pandemic, the COVID cases, the switch to remote learning, it's all pales in comparison to the fact that we're alive. We're here today. We get to talk about fucking rad music. And on top of that, I get to do it with one of my best friends. So fuck off everybody else. Here we are. This is what we got. So
that's a healthy attitude. Because imagine if you had to do all that shit and there was no show. You just watch a sitcom or something. That would fucking suck. Well, it would suck for me. I need to be doing something that feels significant to me, whatever that may be.
I had an old student. She was picking up her younger sister Thursday of last week, and she was wearing a Friends hoodie. Do you know that's popular now?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Well, I walked right up to her and I was like, oh, you watched that show? And she looked right at me and she goes, oh no, that show's terrible. I was like, good girl. It's not a funny show. I don't understand. We've talked about this before. I have a sister that I don't really speak to terribly often or ever. She's a huge fan. She tried to convince me that Big Bang Theory was funny.
Yeah, no, it's not.
If you need a laugh track, it's not a funny show.
No.
Not funny. It's not a funny show.
I mean, I don't like sitcoms in general. I like older ones that I watched, but it just doesn't do it for me.
I think a lot of the shows that I like that I go back to are things that are tied to memories. I liked Taxi because I watched Taxi with my mom, and I thought that was funny because there was jokes in there I didn't get, and I knew my mom laughed at them, so I'm like, ooh, that's something I should know about, but I'll laugh with her. But I actually had that thought the other day. We talked about this before. I brought something up on the last show and I was embarrassed. I was by myself. I was in the shower and I was like, ew, you brought up that story before. It was a story. And I was like, oh no, if someone's a real listener of this show, and they listen fairly often, they heard that story before. And they're hitting that skip 15 seconds button. Ugh.
Yeah. Ugh. I mean, well, listen, we're two individuals and we only have a finite amount of experiences that we can share. So, and this is a weekly show. I mean, what are we going to do? So anyway, Tommy, by the time this show is done being recorded, I think you're going to feel a lot better. It's going to be exciting talking to Joe, and I'm doing okay. Things are actually really boring right now, Tommy. Everything's fine. There's no controversies. Work is good. Podcast good. Life good. And you know what? I love it. I want things to be boring.
I always think about, you're going to get a phone call someday that's going to throw a wrench into the boring. I absorb the boring. I love the boring because it's predictable.
Yeah, I'm living it up right now. I love this. The hardest thing I have to decide each weekend is what video games to play.
That's a phenomenal problem to have.
Yeah. And believe me, there's a lot of them. I'm playing too many. I have a running spreadsheet of all the games I've played this year, and I'm currently playing. I'm close to 30.
Really?
Yeah.
If you had to pick only 2 of them, what would they be?
Okay, well, my favorites were Last of Us 2 and Final Fantasy VII Remake. All the other stuff is, it's a combination of PC stuff, NES, those games aren't long, PlayStation 4 stuff, It's a good mix. But listen, we're out of time for this first segment. Check in back with us after we talk to Joe. We have some more exciting things planned for you. But right now, we're going to talk to Joseph Grillo. Enjoy. All right, folks, we're here now with Joseph Grillo. Joseph, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you here. So I have to ask, how are you doing today?
Today's pretty good. I'm normally a little bit sleep deprived. It's just sort of what I work under. My son has some sleeping issues, so I'm normally, if he sleeps the night, I'm up at 5:30 every morning. If he doesn't sleep the night, I'm up at between 1:30 and 2 in the morning. So today's one of those 2 a.m. mornings. But, sleep deprivation is the cheapest drug. So I am high all the time for free.
That's beautiful. Yeah, we were talking a little bit before we hit record. You've got twin 6-year-olds.
I do. Yeah, one boy, one girl, and it's fantastic, but it's crazy.
I actually used to say this when I started a new job. I went from working at a law firm to teaching middle school, and the year I started teaching was the year my daughters were born, and they're about to turn 8 at the end of November.
Congratulations.
And thank you so much. And I remember I walked into work one day, and the lady who was like the supervisor of like all the math team was like, "Hey, how are you doing today?" I'm like, "I just realized how much money I could have saved on alcohol and drugs if I had just realized I didn't have to sleep." And she was like, "Okay, go be in charge of children now." It's like, look, I'm sorry. Like you have auditory hallucinations. You hear things that aren't there. You see things that aren't there. You constantly feel like you're slightly dizzy. Like it's amazing. It's like you're 3 beers deep, 24 hours a day. It's amazing.
Yeah, but you also get the mood swings. So you're like, everything's awesome, man. Why is it so difficult? And why does everybody hate me? Who's looking at me? No, things are great. Things are fucking cool.
Why is everything broken? Who took everything out? Why is everything on the that's what I walk upstairs when I'm done this podcast. I do this in the basement. So we have a finished basement at our house. So I walk up the stairs and it's all nice and clean in the basement, everything's squared away, and then I walk up the steps onto Legos and dolls and hairbrushes, and I'm like, what happened up here? Did you guys take out everything you own and just leave it on the floor? Like, did you know I was coming up in the dark, or what's going on?
What if you just never cleaned up?
I hate to say
this. It just
this.
gets worse.
Yeah. You end up with piles on piles. Like you think like, oh, that can't get worse. It can. Yeah. You can spill food in it. You can get crumbs in it.
The food, you got to avoid the food messes because that's when creatures come in and nobody wants that.
Have you seen a child eat? Like, my daughter ate goldfish the other day, like the 2-year-old, like almost 2-year-old, stuffed goldfish in her mouth, and literally entire goldfish like are just falling out of her mouth as she's slamming her palm into her face, smushing them in. I'm like, oh, okay, that's just happening now. We'll get the vacuum out.
I feel your pain. That's all I can say, because I know it.
Gentlemen, I do not envy you. I have 0 children, and I do intend to keep it that way.
That's fine. I'm not I have to say I'm not a big like proponent of like everyone should have kids, man. It changes your life. It does change your life, but
yeah,
I don't think it's for everybody.
No. Oh God.
And I couldn't have done it. I didn't become a dad until I was 41, and I would have been a horrible father in my 20s. So I think that I finally hit a point in my life where I'm like, you know what? I'm ready to take on this challenge and chapter, but I don't think it's, no, not everybody should. You don't have to.
Yeah, that is a good point. And I never say never because, I definitely would have been a bad father in my 20s and my 30s too, probably. But I feel like now I'm in a place where I could do it. I don't think I want to, but never say never. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think the one thing about having kids that kind of balanced me out was you, and Joseph, you kind of hit this, like you have these weirdly like high dizzying kind of parts where you're like, this is amazing. This is the best thing in the world. The kids are so much fun and I can't wait to be around them. And I'm around them now and they're hugging me and we're having a great time and we're going for a walk and we're playing in the park. And then you also have those moments of like the twins are at each other's throats over, a squishable that they're going crazy over and they have to share it. Or the baby is doing something crazy and she's like knocked over something or pulled a glass. Like, the kids are 7. So like they leave glasses out. Like, I left my glass of juice out. And they're like, okay, well, the baby walked over and pulled that down. And you're like, you go from these, like, this is amazing to, okay, there's a very humbling experience of trying to balance your emotions in those moments, because I grew up in a house where my mom was like constantly screaming at us. And it's like, you know what? I don't want to be that parent. And I honestly remind myself when I'm about to raise my voice, like, don't. There's no point in doing this. Losing your temper right now, one, scares the kids. You are literally 2 feet taller than them and weigh 100 pounds more than them. And on top of that, it's not helpful. It doesn't make the situation any better. So taking that moment of like, not clarity, but kind of introspection of like, all right, I'm going to take a second to just step back. I had to do it with Keith, like right before we came on here. He was like, I could hear it in your voice. You're upset. And I'm like, yeah, I need a minute. And I literally just sat here for 30 seconds and went, and just did deep breathing, like just to kind of center myself, because you can't allow those moments of like agitation to rule the way that you're going to, raise your kids. It's really, it's a delicate balance, but
no, I think it forces you, if you want to be good at it. I mean, the thing is I knew I was never a parent up until my 40s because I knew I'd be good at it, and being good at it means sacrifice, right? And then, and extreme sacrifice. And I didn't want to sacrifice when I was younger. And then I just hit a point where it's like, okay, I'm cool with it. But it also, it makes everything else in your life seem so fucking easy. Like being in a band. How hard is that? How hard is it to get in a van with like 3 or 4 other of your friends and just go and have a good time? And yet people in their 20s mess that up all the time. Or it actually, friendships that I'd not cared for, or I'd been neglectful to. I think having children and sort of like being forced to be in the moment, being forced to be zen, being forced to be like, I'm not going to scream because that's not helpful. I'm going to do the best thing. I'm going to try and educate them. I'm going to try and take this negative and turn it into a positive, which is what you're constantly doing, right? So then you look, it makes you reflect on your entire life before you were a parent and go, whoa, man, was I selfish about this, that, and the other thing. And maybe if I'm lucky enough, maybe I can address that. Maybe I can actually reconnect with some folks, which I did recently with Garrison, actually, with some of the guys in the band, and talk to them and really get on the level. And just, I always kind of feel that you spend your whole life trying to get back to the person you were in the second grade, right? Up until the second grade, this varies from person to person. You didn't have a sense outside of yourself. You just, if you said hi to somebody, you assumed that they saw you the way you saw you. And then you reach this point, and again, it differs for everyone, where you suddenly go, oh, people perceive me differently than the way I am presenting myself. And it just throws everything out the window. And then you spend the rest of your life trying to get back there, where you don't care, where you just walk up and you go, hi. And you know what I mean? And you just try and be who you are. And so I feel like I've been, especially recently in my interactions with a lot of my adult friends, especially people that I've known for decades, getting back to that sort of person who I was in the second grade, which I love.
That's interesting. Yeah. How old are you, Joseph?
I'm 47.
Okay, so I'm 39, and so is Tommy, and I'm coming to that same realization lately. I just care a lot less about trying to be quote-unquote cool or putting out some image that I think I need to be. I am getting back to the roots of what I enjoyed when I was young. I like the things I like. I talk to the people I talk to, and I don't really give a crap about anything else.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
I think that's great. So it's something to attain and something to nurture.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the things about parenting is it is extraordinarily humbling, but at the same time, you actually end up doing a lot of work, not on your children, but on yourself.
Oh yeah,
yeah. There's an enormous amount of work where you say, I won't react in the way that I've already been conditioned to, or I've conditioned myself to. There's a lot of times where I've caught myself in the moment going, I'm ready to raise my voice or I'm ready to say something and go, take a second, take a beat, take a moment, step back and really think about this situation, because I know that there were things, and I'm sure we all have these moments where somebody said something to you when you were 7, 8, 9 years old, and it stuck with you forever.
Yeah.
And I consistently go back to those things and go, I may be putting a permanent, indelible mark on my child, and I want to make sure what it is positive.
This has been another episode of the Parenting Podcast with Keith and Tommy.
They'll be really happy when they understand compounded interest and how credit cards work.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? They're way ahead of the game.
Their 401ks will be open when they're 18.
That's right. Yeah.
Tommy, if there's anything you're going to teach those kids, it's fiscal responsibility. That's a story for another time. But now, Joseph, in addition to parenting, you've got a lot of things going on musically. Mm-hmm. We've got a Garrison reissue coming up on Iodine Recordings, the 1999 record, The Bend Before the Break. And we've got your new band, Judas Knife, who's going to be playing their first show soon. And we're going to get into all that. But I want to get to know you a little bit first. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
Well, I'm an Aries.
Me too.
Yeah. No, I grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts. Shrewsbury, actually, a suburb of. But Worcester was sort of the background of my childhood. And my father was an electrician. My mother was a respiratory therapist. She quit when my brother and I were born, so she was a stay-at-home mom. I had a very idyllic childhood. My parents are still together. I adore them. They were lovely. I have one older brother who I also adore. And growing up in Shrewsbury was pretty cool. Growing up in the Massachusetts school system in the late 70s, throughout the 80s into the 90s was pretty good. I had some teachers that were sort of collections of nervous tics and some teachers that were phenomenal. Particularly, I had some great music teachers. Now, on the creative side, the creative writing teachers as well were great.
So growing up, were you into the arts? Were you always into music?
You know, there very, very little music played in my house. My parents weren't into music or really into the arts. I think they are incredibly supportive of something that they don't understand, which is something, you know, I aspire to be. You know, I would be on the road somewhere, you know, playing a show with one of my bands, like especially the noisier stuff like Gay for Johnny Depp, and they'd be like, "We don't get it, but have a great show tonight, kick ass." And I'm like, "Thanks, Mom and Dad. Please don't ever come to my shows." Just reiterated, never ever come to my shows. But yeah, I mean, I discovered music originally through musical theater, and well, what was on the radio, right? So WAAF in Worcester, Boston was like, in the 80s was a lot of hair metal. And then there was BCN, which played a lot of classic rock. So I kind of, and then there's all the dance stuff in the 80s, like CNC Music Factory and Paula Abdul and Belle Biv DeVoe. And I think that being raised in Massachusetts in that time, it's hard to imagine. I don't remember a time in my life I didn't know most of the Beatles songs. I don't remember a time in my life I didn't know, you know, a fair amount of Pink Floyd or Led Zeppelin, just because the Eagles, it's always around you just via osmosis. But it wasn't in the house. Like I said, my parents had, I don't know, maybe 10 records. So I discovered comic books and music around the same time. And then the first thing I listened to that I wasn't spoon-fed, right? So I listened to a lot of hair metal. You know, saw Bon Jovi in 1986 on the Slippery When Wet tour. Saw Def Leppard a couple times on the Hysteria tour and whatnot. And then I remember discovering Pink Floyd's The Wall. And that album was really monumental to me, especially because it's also very musical theater based, with all the choral and the brass that are part of it. And then I had some friends who not only were into that, my friend Ed, who was in Garrison, was into Pink Floyd, and we knew each other and we would talk a lot about Pink Floyd. But then I'd listen to The Cure and REM and all the sort of alternative music, Depeche Mode, of the 80s. And that got me going to, there was a place in Worcester called The WAG, which is the Worcester Artist Group. And it was an illegal warehouse on Harlow Street. And they would put on shows. And the shows were, not only were there, you know, music shows, but there were art shows and poetry, and it was great. It was really nice to experience that at a young age, and to experience art in the full spectrum of it. You know, you'd go to a show. People talk about this a lot, about how you'd go to a show and there were really diverse bills, but you know, it would be like a hardcore band, a doom goth band, a hippie jam band on the same bill, and it'd be fun. And it was all music, and it was all different, and it all wasn't on the radio, and it all wasn't what you were spoon fed from MTV, particularly in the 80s. And so that, plus going to see, you know, gallery openings of sort of more out there art and stuff that was somewhat comic book and somewhat pornographic, and somewhat just being like blown away in you know, the 8th, 9th, 10th grade, or going to see, you know, performance art. You know, a guy named Bill McMillan from Worcester would do this crazy stuff with a hatchet and a burqa and like fake blood, and I just was so enamored with being allowed into this thing that was so different than my upbringing, which was very nice and very quaint and very suburban. So that was a huge influence.
So what was your thing? Like, I mean, in terms of underground music, what grabbed you? Was it hardcore or post-hardcore? Or what kind of things were you into?
Definitely wasn't hardcore. Yeah, I liked guitar rock. I liked alternative music, songs. And I liked, and I still like, everything that hardcore influenced. But I never really liked hardcore itself, or punk really. I just thought it was kind of boring. Probably because I'd had a musical background, and I listened to a lot of prog rock when I was younger, a lot of early Genesis. And I thought, I loved the energy of punk, and I loved the energy. The hardcore shows were gorgeous. Like seeing people, the crowd, be part of the show was really eye-opening. But musically, I didn't enjoy it until I heard sort of the next step forward. You know, I didn't like punk. I liked the Replacements, which wouldn't exist without punk. I didn't like hardcore, but I loved Drive Like Jehu or Sonic Youth, or, you know, like that wouldn't exist without these hardcore elements. So those were the thing. I think a guitar rock would be the easiest way to sort of the umbrella for it.
So let's talk about the early days of Garrison. When did you start playing guitar, and how did you start playing with other people?
I think I was more inspired by my friends than I was, you know, any one band. And my pals were in a band called Frozen Culture in high school, which were kind of a alternative hippie jam band. And I remember just sitting in the basement, you know, countless hours and watching them play. And I think watching my friends do it sort of inspired me that maybe I could do it. And so I started playing. I picked up a guitar in 1989 and just started playing. And I had maybe about 4 months of lessons. But mostly what I would do is I would play along to songs. So I'd play along on the radio, or, you know, my cassette tapes, and I'd play along. I wouldn't try and learn the song because I wasn't particularly interested. I would try to play notes that sounded like they belonged in the song, you know, like another guitar line over that, you know, Jane's Addiction record or that REM record, like something that sounded like it fit. That was sort of more intriguing to me.
Yeah, I would learn a piece of a song and then just run with it. Because someone showed me how to read basic tablature, and I was like, wait, it's that easy? Seriously? Oh, maybe I can do this. And yeah, like you said, I was inspired by my friends. I happened upon the local hardcore scene, and a bunch of my friends were in bands, and they had guitars and amplifiers and played shows, and I was like, holy shit, like, you can really do this? This is something I always wanted to do, so I was really inspired by my friends who were doing it.
Where are you from?
I am, Tommy and I are from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is just south of Philadelphia, so there's a ton of bands that came out of that area, hardcore and otherwise.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I think guitar is it's really forgiving in a way that, you know, I took violin lessons in the 4th grade, and I was so bored because you practice and practice and practice, and after a few months you can kind of play Mary Had a Little Lamb. Yeah. Whereas, you know, with guitar, within a couple of weeks or a couple of days, you can play some of your favorite songs because they're so simple. I got 2 chords, I got that change. And it's so, it just keeps you wanting to play more and more. And I think tonally, I always wanted to play a guitar that would allow me to write, or an instrument that would allow me to write. So guitar seemed like the obvious choice because I didn't like a horn. I didn't like things that were only one note. I wanted chords because I wanted the sort of color palette of the notes playing off of each other.
I think the thing that got me, and Joseph, I can kind of identify with this, is like the guitar parts in songs made me feel a certain way, and I would hear it and go, I need to be able to replicate that. And I think the first one that really got me, I think I was like maybe 9 or 10, and I saw Wayne's World. And I remember hearing the riff for that Queen song,
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
And I remember hearing that going like, oh my God, I need to be able to play that. And I remember asking my mother, like right after that, like, I need to take guitar lessons. Keep in mind, I had taken piano and I did that Suzuki method where you do piano and violin in tandem. And I was like, I'm not progressing at this at any speed. Can I please do something else? My mom was like, well, you have to take an instrument, so you might as well learn guitar. And I think I made it through 2 lessons.
I've realized recently, I can't believe it. It's funny how late we all sort of have these epiphanies, but I realized how important tone was to me, and how the tone and timbre of guitars and drums and bass, and maybe somewhat distorted vocals really connected to me. I listen to, on the radio when I'm driving. Now I'll listen to classical music, and I love the composition of classical music, but I'm really not terribly inspired by the tones of a symphony. Even if you're sitting at a symphony, the volume's nice. I would prefer to hear one cello play or one violin play than I would a whole symphony, because there's something about the tones and the timbres that I'm more likely to get chills from that one sound than I am the combination. And I think guitars do that for me.
I think that's always the thing. That Bach piece, the cello suite, where it's a nano. When I hear that, the hair on my arm raises up.
Oh yeah,
it's an incredible thing. Although I have heard a piece, it's a Mozart piece recently, and it's Symphony 29. Mozart wrote that when he was 18 years old. And then I think about what I was doing at 18. And I know that's not fair to compare yourself. I know people's life expectancy was probably 54 years old at that point in time. So people lived a little bit differently.
You're comparing yourself to somebody that was probably moderately autistic and was tortured by his father, and in a world where it's not like he had World of Warcraft to keep him distracted.
Precise. Yeah, but again, I had that moment of like, someone who's barely an adult made this absolutely exquisite thing that you just sit back and go, it's beautiful. Like it conjures those things of like, that scene in Ferris Bueller where they're like walking through the art museum and they're playing the music behind. Like, it's that thing of like, God, this is what culture really is. Like, this is exposure. This is beautiful. Like, and at the same time, I go, there's a kind of moment of, there are really true geniuses among us, like people that can create this ultimate, like just things that are just gorgeous. But I don't know how many we're really exposed to.
Well, music is, yeah. I mean, there's only so much documentation, right? But, music was the first language, right? So, before we had words, there were sounds, and which is why it's universal. And why, so many people from different ethnicities or cultures or backgrounds or geography can hear, Pablo Casals play the cello, and we all just kind of stop. We're like, whoa. Or you hear Sam Cooke sing, and you just stop, and you're like, this is just awe-inspiring, and it's great. I think that, that's why I still get so jazzed about music. I'm pardon the pun. Music is just so, it just keeps giving. And the more, the more there is to know, and so I've been on a super posy kick as of late.
So when did you start playing in front of people? What kind of bands were you in, and what kind of bands were you playing with?
Well, I'd performed a lot of theater, in musical theater, probably from the 4th grade on. So I was used to performing in front of like anywhere from 600 to 800 people with that. And then, so getting in front of a crowd was easy, but it was never quite as satisfying as composing my own music. I guess I started playing music in front of people, maybe senior year of high school, first year of college, or that I felt that my music was good enough to, it wasn't, but I felt that it was good enough to be heard by other people. And that was some, I did play the WAG once, and then some open mic nights I'd play acoustic guitar and sing songs, and then for a little while I was playing with a cello player, and we'd perform coffee shops, in the seacoast of New Hampshire to like 10 people while you get interrupted every time somebody makes a cappuccino.
How old are you when you're doing this type of stuff? Because
17, 18, 19.
See, I think that's incredible because I always wanted to play so badly in front of people, and I really love it when people just take the initiative and get out there and do it. Like you're playing open mics by yourself, acoustically or with a cello player, and I don't know, I was too afraid to do it until I was 24 when I could finally join a band.
Well, the funny thing about that is you always feel, and it seems so silly in retrospect, right? But we all, and I think it's a collective thing, we all have imposter syndrome, and we all feel like we're too late. We're behind the 8 ball. I didn't start Garrison until I was 23, and I thought I was so old.
Yeah.
And before that, I'd had a sort of a, math prog rock emo band called Stricken for Catherine with these really marathon like songs. And I'd done that. And then, Garrison was at 23. So I didn't start touring until I was 23 outside of New England. And again, I felt like I was getting past my prime. And it's also indicative of the city you live in. I mean, one of the main reasons I moved to New York City from Boston was I felt in Boston, my whole peer group sort of at the age of 26 coupled up and moved off to the suburbs, and that I was at 26, I'm the old guy at the basement show. And it felt really weird. And whereas, I'd go to New York and you'd run into somebody and they were like 38 and a sculptor, and that was completely acceptable. And I thought I want to be here. And so I think the main reason that the thing about New York that pulled me to it was the fact that my lifestyle would fit into the overall presence of that city.
So let's talk about the early days of Garrison. How did it come together, and how did things start picking up?
Garrison was myself and Ed McNamara, my childhood friend, and Ed had a sort of really epic math rocky band called Iris, and I had Stricken for Catherine. And then we both kind of came to the decision that we were a little tired of this really long. We were all trying to be Rodin, basically, and Bitch Magnet, those bands, like really long, epic pieces, and we weren't really quite good enough to do it. But we wanted to write something with a little bit more pop, I guess. And so Garrison was sort of our version of a pop band. And because he and I had known each other for so long, we had such a common vocabulary. And he had been in bands, he was in that band Frozen Culture that inspired me when I was a kid. So I always kind of looked up to him. He's quite a role model as far as his guitar playing and his songwriting and his voice. And so we started playing together in spring of 1998. And then, we were really industrious. He had done a venue in Worcester, Massachusetts called The Space. That was his brainchild, and he had sort of spearheaded that, which was taking the inspiration from the WAG and sort of pushing it forward. And then Stricken for Catherine's last show was on June 28th, in the summer of 98, and Garrison's first show was on June 29th, summer of 98. And I just remember we had a East Coast tour booked before our first show. We'd made demo tapes. We recorded them with Kurt Ballou in his basement in Alston. And we went to $1 a pound and got a bunch of shirts and screen printed a bunch of shirts with Garrison on it. We wanted to do this, and we were hungry for it. So we got out, we made demo tapes. We sent them out to every record label. We went on a 10-day East Coast tour. And then by August, we'd come back, and Revelation Records had left a message on my voicemail and said they wanted to talk more.
So it sounds like you had all the connections and all the pieces in place already. I mean, Garrison's first show is the day after your last band, and you've already got a tour booked.
Well, the tour was booked. The tour was booked because of Kurt, actually. He and I had met each other because Stricken for Catherine played with his old band, the Huguenots, who I adored. And we just became fast friends because we recognized that we're both absolute geeks. And and we would write letters back and forth when I was living up in New Hampshire. And he sent me a list of like all the contacts down the East Coast, like, this is who you call in Vermont when you want to play Burlington at 242. This is who you talk to in North Carolina, which was incredibly helpful. And we wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't for his help. He's quite, having listened to a lot of podcasts of a lot of folks from the Merrimack Valley, like the Caven guys and Piebald guys. I think that Kurt was a lot more than he would probably ever give himself credit for. I think he was really the impetus for that whole scene because he was a little bit older, and he would grab those guys and be like, hey, you want to be in a band with me? We're called 7% Solution. Okay, let's do this. You want to be in a band? We're called the Huguenots. Let's do this. And they would be like, okay, cool. And I think that he was really far more important than people may ever know to the inspiration of the scene that was maybe just a year or two younger than he is.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wanted to bring that up and how Garrison fit into all that, because the number of amazing bands that have come from that area, like the list just goes on and on to this day. Yeah,
well, there's something in the water. I don't know.
one of our other guests said the same exact thing, and I agreed.
It's an interesting place, Boston's a lovely little town with a gigantic chip on its shoulder, and Worcester is something else. I could go on and on about Worcester, but I won't bore you. But I think right time, right place. I think that there was something going on where there was competition, a healthy amount of competition between the bands. There was enough younger people that were excited to see it. So there was an infrastructure. It just wasn't the artists. It was all the people going to the shows, and there were people doing zines, and there were people, Brian McTurnan, good Lord. He was up there recording with Salad Days. He was, Rama was putting out records with Big Wheel. There was so much stuff going on, Aaron Turner, that further inspired you, so if your peers put out a record, you go, maybe I can do that, 7-inch, and everything's the next step, right? And then you go, okay, and if your peers can record on 2-inch tape with somebody, you can do that. You don't have to record on a 4-track anymore. And then if your peers can, maybe get signed, quote unquote, signed to an international label, then maybe you can do that, and then and we were like, oh God, wouldn't it be amazing to, later record with Jay Robbins, and, I think Mahmood had his number, and he was like, yeah, here, call him. And we're like, well, no, he's like out of our scene. He's like, he's a famous person that was in Jawbox. Like, we can't talk to him. And they were like, wait, why can't we? Yeah, let's call him. And so that sort of, that feeling was really alive that I can recall at that time in my mid-20s.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that's one thing I learned now with doing this podcast, because I would think the same thing. I'd be like, wait, no, I can't talk to them. They're like, no, I wouldn't want to bother them. And now it's just like, oh, someone slides me an email, I'm going to take my shot. Because if you catch the person on the right day, they're going to say yes.
Yeah, and I think most people want to talk. I don't know. Most people like it. Life's pretty interesting, right? And we're social creatures, and it's fun to meet new people and talk to them about, your experiences. And this is great. This is like going to therapy. I get to sit down and talk about my past, myself, and my feelings.
Yeah. How often does someone contact you to say, hey, let's sit down for 1.5 hours so you can talk about your life?
Not enough.
All right. So Garrison is together. Revelation Records is leaving a message on our answering machine.
Yeah. We got back to him. Brian McTurnan, who was already on the label with his band Battery, and he'd recorded Texas is the Reason's first 7-inch and a bunch of other stuff, but Texas is the big one that he recorded for Revelation. And then he was a pal of Ed's, and so he helped us record more demos. He was kind of a scout for Revelation anyways. And then Jeff Caudill from Game Face, they were on tour, and he was working at Rev. He was doing their art, all the sort of art design stuff. And Game Face were coming through, and they were playing downstairs at the Middle East. They were on tour with the Get Up Kids, I think. And they called us and said, hey, why don't you open up? And it was kind of a chance to have Jeff check us out. and make sure it was good for the label. So we kind of had all these things sort of converging at the same time to say to Revelation, hey, this is a band you should sign. Because I think the idea too, when we started it, and what I was trying to do with Ed was, you make whatever your project is, you give it kinetic energy. So you let people know, look, this is happening with or without you. You get on this train if you want. I'm not going to sit around and wait and pray and be like, oh God, I hope Revelation Records signs me. If you don't sign me, someone else will, and I'm going to put out records. And if someone else doesn't sign me, I'm going to put it out myself, and it's going to happen. And we're going to tour, and we're going to play shows, and we're going to see people, and we're going to travel, and we're going to do this. Period. Get on this train if you want, And if you present it like that, it's so much more attractive, because things with kinetic energy, everybody wants to be a part of it, right? So people sort of gravitate towards it, and I think that we kind of had that. Particularly probably because Ed and I had that because we were playing off of each other. So on a microcosm, he and I were inspiring each other to do more, because you can't slack off if you got someone else pushing you. And so if we are doing stuff and then we're doing stuff and then someone else sees that and goes, oh, wow, these guys are doing stuff. I want to do more stuff with them. It kind of snowballs.
And then we have the debut record, right? The Bend Before the Break. Now, yep. I remember seeing this record everywhere back in the day. Whenever I see that record cover, I instantly think of, I was starting a band in 2007, and the guy who was trying out on bass, he said, Garrison is my absolute favorite band. This is the record. Check out this record. And I love this record. It's got, I think it's very at home on Revelation Records. It's got that post-hardcore, quicksand kind of feel with some emo elements in there. And, like Drive Like Jehu, all these elements you described. It's a classic.
Oh, shucks. Thanks. That's nice of you to say. I mean, that was a wonderful record to make. We were really happy. We were really, everything was looking up. It's the first record I did on a international label. I remember thinking to myself when we signed to Revelation, I was like, I'll never have to pay to make another record. So not true, but it was really, exciting and humbling and awesome. And I think it really not messes with your head. It kind of blows you away for all the good and bad about it. Because remember that record came out, and the number that sticks in my head is it sold 6,000 copies the first week. And I was like, that means people I don't know are buying the record. And it was really hard for me to wrap my head around that someone I may have never met listened to my music, and it was part of their whatever. Maybe it was, not a big part of their life, but a part of the background. Like that was a sort of a head fuck, but in a beautiful way. And so, so Garrison puts out that record. And so now you got a record distributed internationally. You better start touring internationally. So we started touring the States. I think our first full tour of the United States was with a band called Boy Sets Fire.
Oh, yes.
Who were great. They were on their In Chrysalis EP, which was on Initial Records. And they had been doing it for a couple of years, and they were really, really professional dudes. And it was fun to watch them and sort of glean a little bit from their experience and be like, oh, wow, they are not ashamed to go up to the promoter at the end of the show and be like, where's our money? I was like, that's cool. You know what I mean? They're not, they know how to get from point A to point B. Wow, they booked a hotel. We're just begging to sleep on floors. Damn, these guys have it together.
It's funny how you pick up those little things from the other bands. Like I remember being on tour with this band, and they had a sound tech who set up all the pedals and everything, and I watched how he did it, and then I would replicate the same setup when I was playing a show, like taping the cords to the pedal and everything. This was before, like, you could buy a pedal-trained pedal board anywhere. No,
that was, all those little tricks, like, God. What a godsend when people discovered tuners. Yeah. The audience didn't have to hear you go bing bang. That was what a wonderful thing. And all those little pro tips. Oh, if I put gaffer tape down on the edge of my cord, I won't pull out the cord when I jump around like an idiot. Cool, I'm going to do that. All those stupid little tricks that you learn. It's not like there's a book and you can't see it on YouTube. So you're just out there and you suddenly do it. You see somebody else do it and you go, I'm going to do that.
Did you start asking promoters for money?
Yeah. Well, we started. It's an interesting thing in the punk rock world because the definition, they don't understand the definition of the word guarantee.
Yeah.
Like we had an $80 guarantee. It's not a lot of money, but you guaranteed us $80. We drove 9 hours. We played. It's not my fault you didn't promote this show very well. You didn't make a flyer. You're telling me you didn't make a flyer, and there's 5 people here. We are going to go to the ATM, and you are going to get $80 and give it to us. And it wasn't to be an asshole to the promoters, but it was just like, you also didn't want to be an asshole to your bandmates. You're like, okay, well, look, I don't want to get fucked over, and I'm sorry you didn't do your job, or you think it's punk rock to not pay me, and I'm sure you're doing good work here promoting the scene and everything in your neck of the woods, but you can't do it at my expense. And so that was something to learn early on. That's the whole thing. It's like when you go, when you're traveling, like it's fucking work, man. It's beautiful work. It's great to travel, especially when you're younger and you get to see all these things and you want to be in the moment and you want to be appreciative of it, but you also don't want to completely let yourself get fucked over and be like, oh yeah, okay, you can only give us $7. Okay, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to play to those 5 people.
Yeah, but being assertive is hard for me.
It's really hard for especially anybody in the punk scene because we're all completely socially inept. That's why we're in that scene.
Yeah, Anthony and I had like an experience like that where we booked that place, that Trihampton YMCA, like right near our house. And we were like, this is going to be great. We booked a couple bands and Anthony somehow got the Jazz June. They put a record out on Initial as well. And I remember, they were from like northern Pennsylvania, like Kutztown kind of area. And he was like, yo, I got them to play. I'm like, no, they're not showing up. They showed up and they played. And then they asked us for $100. And we were like, oh, okay, well, let's go to the door. Let's figure out how much money we made because the place was packed. And they were like, oh, we keep 100% of the door. Like, that's what happens here. You guys got to book the place for free. Like, you just showed up 2 days ago and filled out the form. And we're like, oh, okay. And keep in mind, like Anthony and I are like washing dishes, we're like 15 years old. We're like, okay. So I like literally emptied out like my Mac account. I was like, oh, let me go to the Mac machine and get money out. And like, we like put our money together. We're like, we have $87. We're really sorry. And the guys were like, oh, that's okay. Thanks a lot, guys.
You did the right thing. Well done.
All right, so we're touring on the Bend before the break. How was it back then? Were you just doing the band full time? Were you out on the road all the time?
As much as we could be. And we all had jobs that sort of facilitated that. So, when I first got out of college, I worked in a provincial French restaurant. I started washing dishes, but I learned to cook on the line. But that became something that, you needed to dedicate some time to. And so when I moved to Boston, I got a job at a burrito joint. Rolling Burritos, a place called the Big Burrito, and it was all musicians. And the guy that owned it, whose name was Michael Rubin, was really cool. And he basically was like, you want to take off 3 weeks and go on tour? Cool, you'll have a job when you come back. You want to work now that you're back and you have no money, you want to work every day for the next 10 days? Cool. And he would facilitate us being, he thought the place would do better if the people that worked there was happy and were happy, and he was correct. And so we would all work any job that, that we could leave at the drop of a hat. So I've worked a lot of different jobs. Garrison was probably on tour probably 4 to 5 months a year, although not straight. It would be like a week here and then a week off and then like 2 days and then like 3 weeks. But we were doing the band full time, but not paying the bills with it. I've never actually been in a band that paid the bills other than when I joined my friend's band that were on Geffen Records. Other than that, everything has been, music has always been the job I pay to have.
Was that Instruction?
Yes.
Joseph, I heard that Instruction toured with Korn, and a recurring theme on this show is we try to bring up Korn in every episode possible, so you have to tell us about that.
Our experience with Korn is we went out on one of those bigger tours with Korn. So it was Korn, Breaking Benjamin, Skindred, and Instruction, and there was probably some other band. Chevelle, I think, was on that tour too. The Korn guys, there's 5 of them. They have 5 separate buses. I guess they don't like each other very much. I don't know.
Whoa. What year was this?
This was 05, 06.
Ah, yeah. They hit in 99, so they were probably sick of each other by then.
Yeah. I wasn't too impressed, by them as folks. No one came up and said hi, introduced themselves. Whereas I don't know, you've probably had other people say it, the band Papa Roach. They are the coolest, nicest people on the planet.
Yeah.
They're
really
amazing. Yeah. They are the sweetest, most hardworking, diligent, coolest people you could hope to meet.
That makes me feel so good.
Yeah.
Like that's heartwarming.
It's disappointing to me when you're working with someone or in close quarters with someone, and I experienced this, where they will pretend you don't even exist. And it's like, I see you every night. You can't look at me and say hello. Like, we don't have to be friends, but you can act like a human being.
Yeah, so in reference to Korn, this is like all stuff you shouldn't say, but I mean, like Fieldy, for example, like when you walk down, if you're walking, like he's coming one way and you're going the other way down a hallway, and I think he might just have some issues. He sees you and he faces the wall until you pass.
No way.
Yeah, he's just not, just the normal thing, like, hey man, how you doing? That's not in his vocabulary. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think the more insulated you get, the weirder you get in some cases too. Like you just can't deal with the public anymore.
Or you also get people that, without naming names, that don't know how to have a conversation that isn't an interview. So, you know what I mean? Where you just want to be like, oh, hey, it's nice to meet you. I'm so-and-so. So, what's it like? And they're relatively famous, but they don't know how to stop talking or how to listen or have that tennis game that is a conversation where and now it's your turn and the ball goes back to you. And that you see that sometimes. And that's just, again, you gotta take it with a grain of salt, because how old was that person when they got famous? How socially inept are they? And we think because people are successful or they made some money that maybe they're in that they have it together, quote unquote, but they probably are just like a scared, lost little kid inside. And you see it sometimes, and it's really glaring when you see it.
I was going to say, this is the opposite of that. I worked at Princeton University for a number of years, and
my brother went to Princeton. Nice.
Get out, really? What did he study?
He studied chemical engineering.
Jesus, I'm always in awe when people do material sciences, chemical engineering, or biology. I'm always like, really? Here? Like it's literally the most. You have the most competitive class of people.
Yeah,
and it's just cutthroat. And it's literally people sleeping in the library. Like, but I went to Wawa one day to go get coffee, and I met this guy. He was wearing a Hawaii shirt, and I was like, "Hey, how you doing? What's up? How are you?" Like, "Oh, are you from Hawaii?" And he's like, "Actually, yeah, I was born in Hawaii." He started telling me his whole life story. He shakes my hand and he goes, "My name's Jeff Nunakawa. I'm a professor of English here." And I was like, "I work in the department where I do outreach with the at-risk kids in Trenton." And he's like, "That's phenomenal. Hey, let's go. Like, where are you going right now?" And I was like, "I was going to go back to my office." He's like, "No, come to my office. Hang out with me." He was so sweet. And I was like, this guy is literally like, has written like 8 books. Like, he's well published, and he is the nicest, most down-to-earth person. Like, come into my office, sit down with me, let's have a conversation.
That's so great. That's so great, because what's amazing about that is it's so inspiring to you personally, right? And he probably has no idea. He's just like, oh yeah, he was a nice person when I met that math teacher, but he doesn't know the ripple effect, right? How impactful that is to you, and you may never know how impactful you are to other people, but that stuff that having space and patience and grace towards other people is infectious. And when people treat you like that, you want to be that person in someone else's life too. And that's so, why the hell else are we here, right? That's so great.
Where does it all lead? I mean, we've put out a couple LPs. We're working with Kurt Ballou. We're to produce records. We're touring. How does it all come to an end, and why?
We'd achieved a lot, right? So making a record with Brian McTernan and making a record with Kurt Ballou were fairly achievable goals because they were in our scene and we were pals, right? And then stepping out of that to make a record with Jay Robbins, which we made a record called Be a Criminal with him. That was a big step. Wow, we got to work with him. And we also got to work with Andrew Schneider, who was a sort of local Boston rock luminary as well. He did a lot of stuff for Hydra Head. And so on the recording level, we learned a lot from those experiences. And then on the touring level, we were one of those bands that probably, because our genesis was less organic, and meaning that we didn't play the New England scene for 5 years and then get signed. We played for a couple of months and then got signed to an international label. We we were the kind of band that had 20 kids in every city that liked us. We didn't have any city that had 200 kids. So, especially in the States. So we toured a lot and played a lot. We got really good at playing to next to nobody. There'd be a few people there and they'd be really into it, but not enough for you to feel like your star was rising. And then we'd done some touring in Europe, and the reaction that we got in Germany and Italy and the UK was really, really powerful and much bigger. And there were people at shows, a lot of people, and they were stage diving and having a good time and partying with you afterwards. And that was really great. And so we did a lot more touring of what happened was probably after 2000, I think we stopped touring the States, or 2001, and we only toured Europe really. We'd do like a week or two in the States if we got a good offer, like we would go out with Burning Airlines or New End Original or something, but we wouldn't do it ourselves. Whereas we'd do like a headlining tour for 2 months in Europe, and then come back. So we did all that. The band breaks up for a couple of reasons. One is, it's kind of hard to keep it going, to keep stoking the fires when you're watching your peers succeed so much more than you. So, a band like Thursday, and we're like, oh God, they got signed to Island Records?
Yeah.
Wow. Like we're kind of on par, but wow, I guess not. My Chemical Romance, they came out so much later than us and they got signed. How come nobody wants to sign us? And you start getting jealous and you start getting bitter, and you can't help it. And it's cancerous, but it comes out, and that's what happens. And that starts to infect your relationship with your pals. And you start being like, we're not achieving more because your guitar tone is terrible. Whatever it is.
Start assigning blame.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can't accept the fact that maybe it's you, or whatever, or maybe it's just not in the cards. Like maybe you've actually gotten more than you deserved, and you should be happy with it, right? You don't want to accept that, right? So that starts to infect the band. Now, I've already moved down to New York at this point. Those guys are still in Boston, so it's also getting difficult because I'm driving back and forth once a month at least, if not more, to play shows or to rehearse. And then we'll do these tours. I'm starting to get more involved in the New York scene because I've got friends. My friend Artie is in Error Type 11, and I've got some like sort of inroads there. And then he's in a band called Instruction, and they asked me to join. Now, they had kind of mentioned it, and Garrison was kind of breaking up anyways, and then it didn't come to fruition. And then Garrison sort of imploded in I guess, New Year's Eve of 2002 or 2003 was our last show that I was involved in. They did a couple shows in Japan without me. That was the last show that I was involved in. And then a few months, maybe 3 months later, Artie calls me and is like, hey man, you want to audition for the band and join us? You'll get a paycheck. And I was like, well, okay, sure. And it was great because I had it was interesting to take all the stress off because, in Garrison, I was doing everything. It was helping to book the shows. I was the label contact. I was the person, the go-to guy, right? And, everybody needs like sort of a director or the whip cracker. And that's what I was. And then I joined this band where I'm not doing anything. Like I just play guitar. I show up and play guitar and sing backing vocals. I don't even know the label people. There's management. We have a day-to-day manager and a regular manager. I don't book plane tickets. They take care of that. Cool. They take care of the hotels. We have a roadie. I don't have to change my own guitar strings anymore. Wow. Okay. That's weird. Okay, cool. I don't care. Fine. So that was a real, 180 from what I was used to. And at the same time, I started a band called Gay for Johnny Depp with the singer, with Artie, because I wanted something that I was in complete control of. So I was able to do that and became in complete control of that, while in Instruction, I was just a foil. I would just played a part. And I think because of my theater background, I was happily able to do that. I was like, yeah, I'm a supporting actor in this one. I'm not driving the bus. It's your bus, buddy. Whereas in Gay for Johnny Depp, I was like, this is my bus. You're on it. So that's how I was, and I really like that in different bands. I like, defining the roles early on and then working within the parameters.
Yeah, that's great to be able to have that sense. Because when I was young, I wanted to do everything all the time. And I didn't realize, I could have a band where I'm just the bass player. And then I could do my own thing where I'm doing this and that. And yeah, and I've been in that situation where I mean, how do you deal with those feelings that you had in Garrison when, because I've been in that situation where you're like, what the hell are we doing wrong? Like, why is this band getting this tour? And why is this band getting signed here? And it's like, how do you deal with those feelings?
It's hard. And especially if you're drinking a lot, it gets really bad, which I really was for too long. And it just starts to go dark places, you know, and you're like, oh, why am I not? It's really self-pitying, stupid behavior, but you go there and you know, and it's not a healthy place to be. And if you're lucky enough, you get out of it and you slap yourself and you're like, well, wow, what am I got to be more appreciative of what I have had and what I have experienced and what I can continue to experience. You know, I'm 47. I've got some music right now. I could get on stage every night, you know, that I'm allowed to play a show somewhere. And once shows are happening again, really, and, you know, feel, oh man, I should be playing Madison Square Garden. I mean, what a way to, that's a horrible way to live, a horrible way to die. I think you also have to have an honest conversation with yourself about what are you envious of? You know, like how many people do you need to like you, need to buy your record and be at your show for you to be happy? And that's a constantly moving scale, because I guarantee you that, you know, the guys in Appleseed Cast wish they were as big as Jimmy Eat World, and I guarantee you Jimmy Eat World wishes they were as big as the Foo Fighters. And it's never ending, because, you know, it's like, how many people need to know your name for you to be famous? At what point are you happy? And there is no answer to that, because it never ends. And so, and again, a lifestyle, you know, my friends, you know, who have been, you know, multi-platinum selling records, they have to tour at the same age that I am now. They have to tour 10 months out of the year just to make ends meet. That sounds horrible. You know, that I would have loved that when I was in my 20s, but I don't want it now. And, you know, I'm in a situation now where I'm fortunate where, you know, I can provide for my family and still make records and still play shows without, music does not have to be my bread and butter. I don't have to make money at music. Therefore, I can make music like I wanted to in high school because I wasn't thinking about money then, not thinking about money now. If nobody buys it, cool, I still made a great record. I'm happy with it.
We've got a vinyl reissue of The Bend Before the Break coming up. Tell us about your relationship with Iodine Recordings and how that came about.
Yeah, I've known Casey forever. He came to that. Remember I was talking about that Game Face Get Up Kids Garrison show? I think that's the show we first met at. He came to that show. He was like, I'm starting a record label. You know, and we were in talks with Revelation. I was like, cool, dude. And he's just like, I want to put out a comp. You want to be on it? And I was like, of course. Yeah, we'll be on your comp. And it was a thing called Ghost in the Gears. And so it was Converge and Cave In. And
that was the first release they did, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he was just a musician in the scene and very, very much of a go-getter and a really sweet guy. And, you know, Casey and I just hit it off. We'd pal around and, go get coffee together at Harold's, and far too many cream cheese bagels. And then he started Iodine, and he wanted to put out, an EP. We wanted to put out an EP with him called The Model when we were still signed to Revelation Records. And so we did. And that was really fun. But we were starting to, the cracks were starting to show as far as the band was concerned. And that was also right at, I think we're looking at 02, 03, where Napster was coming up and people were burning CDs. You know, you'd play a show and hang out at somebody's house afterwards and they'd have a burned copy of your CD. And they'd be like, oh, I love your band. And you'd be like, I would love it if you bought that record. But I'm glad you're listening to it. And anyway, so Casey and I, you know, we were always pals. And then he stopped Iodine in, I want to say 04, 05. He would be able to tell you better than me. And he just went and became like a forest ranger. He just left him off grid. And then, you know, 20 some odd years later, or a little less than 20, he calls me and he's like, hey, I want to do something again. I'm back. I'm doing this. And I'm like, let's do it. Sounds fun. You know, he mentioned a couple different ideas and, you know, we go back and forth a lot. We talk a couple times a week. You know, he wanted to put out the Garrison stuff because he was always a fan of the band. And he called Revelation and said, look, you know, you don't have any plans of putting this out on vinyl. Is you cool if I do? And Jordan was like, yeah, sure. Because Jordan's going to put out vinyl, but he's just going to do all the Youth of Today and Gorilla Biscuits things, because those are his biggest records, right? It's small potatoes for Revelation to press 500 copies of a Garrison record. Whereas for Iodine, it's great because not only can he do it and sell the records, he can give it the love and attention that we think it deserves, which is nice, and it's like in some ways having another band member because he's so excited about it. And it's shocking sometimes. I'm like, you're more excited about this band than I am. And he's great. And so we're putting out a reissue on really pretty colored vinyl with some gorgeous artwork. The tracks have been remastered. And that'll be coming out September 24th. Same day as my other band is putting out a record.
Folks, we want to pre-order that record. There might be some delays with pressing, and because all the vinyl shops are backed up, so it could be November too.
Oh yeah, everything's going to get delayed, but you need to pre-order it anyways because the sales are still going through.
Yes.
So I mean, the nice thing about, I guess, the way that things work now is, I think it sold about 360 copies within a couple hours, which made me feel great that people still cared. And then those copies, and that was before that was just because of an email blast and an Instagram thing. And so, as people, some press picks up on it and writes about it, I'm sure they'll sell out pretty quickly, or I hope they will. It's going to be, that's just the model now for everybody. You're going to pre-order the record. You're going to get the link. You're going to be able to listen to your music, but you won't get the physical copy until you get the physical copy.
Yeah, whenever that is.
Whenever that is, because, they've got to press all those Smashing Pumpkins records. They've got other bigger fish to fry.
How does it feel to have this record coming back, to have it out now on vinyl? Have people contacted you over the years and said, this record's really important to me? Do you have a bunch of old feelings coming back up, this thing seeing the light of day again?
Yeah. It's incredibly humbling. I've had a few people mention, that it was important to them, but, when a record, when there's the focus of it being reissued, and reissued well, you get a lot of people coming out of the woodwork and being like, that record was really important to me. Or, oh God, hey, remember we played some shows together? And more than anything, it's reconnected me with the old bandmates. We got once every 2 weeks, we did a big Zoom call going and talk to each other. And it's been great. It's been great to reconnect, because if it wasn't for this happening, I don't know if I would be talking to them. Or if I would be talking to them and trading old stories and looking at old pictures and talking about playing this show. It's great. People I had experiences with decades ago. And the fact that the record is decades old and people want to listen to it. Fuck, man, that is so humbling. That is, talk right there about, fortunate. That's wonderful. That's really cool. I couldn't be more happy.
Where do things stand with Garrison nowadays? Are you guys together? Are you defunct? Or do we have any plans for the future after this record comes out?
Yeah. I don't know what form it'll take. There's talk of maybe, because there's a lot of back material about maybe re-releasing some of the other material with Iodine. We're figuring that out. Yeah, I think, as the world gets out of the pandemic and we all have other projects, I think we've been talking about maybe playing a Garrison show. I think that'd be a cool time. I think it'd be fun. I don't know. We don't have any plans for when or where, but, I think those guys might start practicing soon. They all live in Boston still. So it's easier for them to get together. Whereas I live, still in New York State. So I'll just drive over at some point and be like, all right, guys, give me a guitar. Let's play.
Where in New York do you live?
Well, I lived in Brooklyn for 20 years, and then we just moved up to Saratoga Springs. So I live up in Saratoga Springs right now.
Oh, nice. I'm in Brooklyn now, so.
Oh, nice. Whereabouts in Brooklyn?
Williamsburg.
I lived in Williamsburg from 2001 till when my house burned down in 2012, and then we lived in Clinton Hill.
Oh, man.
But yeah, Williamsburg's a hoot. I have a wine shop in Williamsburg. That's how I make my bread and butter. I have a wine shop on the corner of North 8th and Berry.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. It's over right next to Jordan Jack's, across the street from that restaurant, Oregano. And so I'm a big wine aficionado, and I still go down to the city every 5 or 6 weeks and taste a bunch of wines and write their descriptions and do the buying and all that fun stuff. And so that's my shop. If you're bored, pop in.
That's amazing. You own a wine shop. Did you have any New York City mob guys trying to come in to take a piece, or was that the old days?
That is the old days, but all of the restrictions that apply to the liquor stores with the state liquor authority are in place because of the mob, because it was the easiest way to launder money. So, you can only own one liquor store, right? So that's why there's no chain liquor stores in New York State. So if I wanted to own another liquor store, it would have to be in my wife's name. And, I was fingerprinted by the FBI. They wanted 6 years worth of bank statements. Having an Italian last name didn't help. I wasn't getting money from my parents, but they wanted 3 years of bank statements from my parents as well, just to make sure. It's pretty. Yeah, it's no joke. But once you're established, now that continued. Well, in Williamsburg, it would have been the Polish mob that used to come by, but not anymore. They've got bigger fish to fry, and maybe they bother some people in Greenpoint, but not in Williamsburg.
Well, you've got a new band too now, Judas Knife.
I've got 2 new bands.
Folks, Judas Knife has 3 singles out on Spotify right now. We want to go listen to those.
So Judas Knife is myself and a gentleman named Drew Thomas, who was the drummer for, Youth of Today and Bold, but more importantly, Into Another in the 90s. And he was also in a great band with Walter Schreifels from Quicksand called Dead Heavens, which are kind of more psych rock stuff. Anyways, he's a fantastic collaborator. And so Judas Knife is he and I for the record. And then we have some people in it now to flesh out the band. And we're playing our first show September 19th at St. Vitus. And the record comes out the same day, September 24th, as the Garrison record. And that record's on Translation Lost Records, which is more of a metal label. We're not a metal band, but we're definitely a darker sounding. I would say it's kind of a cross between Shellac and Depeche Mode. And then I'm in another band called Her Head's on Fire, which I guess is definitely going to be more the people that liked Garrison stuff. It's faster guitar rock, and that's myself. And this guy, Jeff Dean, who was a band called The Bomb from Chicago. Rodrigo plays bass. He was in Saves the Day. And then the drummer is a guy named Jeff Gensterblum, and he was in Small Brown Bike and Lepeche. He's great. So that's a really fun band. And because we're playing music that we've all known how to do for the last couple decades, we just get together. And we had 3 practices and then made a record. It's just like, yeah, cool, great. Is this where it goes? Yeah, that's where it goes. We're all on the same page with that band. So that's a very fun, effortless band for me. Whereas Judas Knife is more of like I'm composing, I'm working, I'm pushing myself.
And Judas Knife has your first show coming up, right? At St. Vitus.
Correct.
On September 19th with our friends in Lovelorn.
Yeah. Lovelorn. So Lovelorn, when they were in a band called Creepoid, toured with Dead Heavens. And so they know Drew. And so they got in touch with us and said, hey, we're playing a show. Do you guys want to be the main support? And we're like, of course, that's perfect timing. So that'll be our record release show.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've never wavered with being involved with music over the years.
Well, I took a 5-year break with the kids. Having the children was all encompassing. And so I was still writing music in my head, but other than playing, Puff the Magic Dragon to them at night, I wasn't playing music. So I did take a break. I also had a cancerous tumor removed, and when it was removed, my larynx was paralyzed for about 8 months. So I didn't have a voice for about 8 months, and it took a long time, a lot longer than 8 months, to sort of get the vocal muscles in tune and my vocal cords back to a place where I can sing again.
How do you get by for 8 months without a voice?
You type a lot of things into your notes app on your phone and show it to people.
Yeah.
It was very strange.
Was it a relief at all? I'm thinking of if I had to deal with that and if I had to not talk to anybody for 8 months, I'd be somewhat relieved.
It was more aggravating than relieving.
Yeah, that would probably be the reality.
Well, the thing about it is, we didn't know if it was going to come back.
Yeah.
And I was okay with it. I wasn't going to cry about it because, I'd survived cancer. So fuck it. Like, losing your voice and being alive is a lot better than having your voice and being dead. So it was a drag, but I also wasn't going to dwell on it. That said, I didn't, singing was always the thing. Singing is the most intimate way that I can make music. I like playing guitar. I like playing bass. I like playing keyboards. I like crafting sounds, but my own voice and singing and the air moving over my vocal cords from my lungs out of my mouth into a microphone is the most intimate way with words I've written that I can express myself. And so I remember the exact moment that I realized my voice was coming back. I was at my wine shop, and REM's Green record was on the radio, and I started singing along to something just because I'd known the record for so long, and I started singing along, and I was actually hitting the notes. And I just went in the back and I wept for a while because I don't think until that moment I'd realized, or I hadn't allowed myself to realize how much I missed having a voice. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. So I'm very, very happy to have a voice again.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad you had a great recovery there. And wow, that's an incredible moment. I mean, did they say that you might never have a voice again? Was that a possibility?
Yeah, it was a possibility. I mean, luckily they didn't have to snip the nerve. They just had to pinch it and put it out of the way. But when they pinched it, it was damaged pretty bad. And the healing of nerves is a very long process. So, maybe it would not come back at all. Maybe it would come back partially. Maybe I'd sound like Tom Waits for the rest of my life. We just didn't know. And then it's pretty much made, as far as I can tell, a full recovery.
I mean, I'm sure you had a lot of mental anguish during the recovery period. What were you thinking? Were you like, oh man, well, maybe I can just play guitar, or maybe I just won't sing anymore? What kind of thoughts were going through your head?
Well, I didn't think about it too much, because I was in the midst of being a dad. So because I'd taken the time off, luckily I didn't have a band or anything, to tell, hey guys, I can't make it to band practice or whatever. I can't sing right now because I was so embroiled in being a father. So I guess I just took, I wrote a lot of the Judas Knife record in my head while trying to put my children to sleep. One of my children has real, like I was saying, difficult time sleeping. And so even putting him down when he can't self-soothe. And so, I would they'd pick him up and put him back into his bed and sit in the dark. And then 5 minutes later, he'd get up and I'd pick him up and put him back in his bed and sit in the dark. And that would be like for 3 hours every night, for a good 1.5 to 2 years. And so what do you do with that time? I can't look at my phone. I can't listen to music. I'm just sitting quietly. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to start composing in my head. And so I would start to write the music in my head. And I think that experience colors the sound of that record.
That's a lot of time I've had. My daughter can self-soothe, but she, for a long period of time, was sharing a crib, like, because they're twins. They shared the crib for the first 3 or 4 months. Then they moved to separate cribs. But slight noises would wake her up. So it was constant. And like you said, it's easier to sit there and just wait, because whatever is about to happen is mere moments away. Like, getting back in bed, getting comfortable, falling asleep, you're wasting your time. So I learned to sleep sitting up for a while. And one of the things you do is you really do have those moments where you just sit and you get very contemplative. You sit and think about life. What does this mean? Why am I here? It's hard to kind of put your finger on it, but what I am really kind of in awe of is that you were able to remember anything from that time. I remember thoughts flashing through my head and then, like the wind, just going away. But you were able to retain that and compose. Like, that's an unbelievable skill.
If that skill probably comes from my theater background. I studied theater in college, and obviously I'd done it, for years in high school and before that. So having to learn lines and having to memorize scenes, I think that any ability to remember things in a structural form probably comes from having honed that when I was younger. But I think that's when there's so much distraction in the world now. And great ideas sometimes come when you're bored out of your mind. Great ideas come, be it a business idea, be it music, be it theater, be it film, be it, I don't know, building a chair, whatever. It comes when you're sitting in a laundromat waiting for your clothes to dry and you don't have a cell phone to look at You're just watching the clothes go around and around, and you're bored. And so your mind, your imagination has to create something to just make life more interesting.
We've lost that. We've lost that ability to kind of you get lost in your own thoughts. Like I notice it even with my kids. When they're bored, they're like, "Oh, can I watch something now?" I'm like, "Can't you play outside? can't you sit and think?" Or now, my one daughter will sit and draw for hours at a time. Like she'll sit, draw with or play with Play-Doh. But my other kid she's restless. Like she just needs to be engaged all the time, or she's causing trouble. She's doing something.
We early on had a moment where, we got out of the city and we went up to this little sort of farmhouse in Accord, and there was a radio there. There's no TV, and there were maybe 10 toys for the kids. And we didn't even have any books or anything. And there was no internet service, right? So, we could have our phones to look at the time. That was about it. And after about 3 days, we were just so happy because you're forced to be in the moment. And the kids, they don't need more than 10 toys. They have an imagination, and they can figure out 1,000 different ways to play with those 10 toys. And you can come up with 1,000 different ways to engage with them, or 1,000 different ways to sit in a room with 2 couches and a wood burning stove and 3 toys and listen to the radio. And maybe you have a dance party. Or maybe you, and whatever it is, or maybe you talk about, the wonder of a sunset or the painting or the beauty of all these things. And that's an incredibly enriching experience that I think we've lost it if we allow ourselves to. We can turn these things off. We can do that. It's just you need the discipline to do it.
So, gentlemen, let's recap. Now, we've got the Bend Before the Break vinyl reissue coming up on Iodine Recordings.
September 24th.
Yes, so September 24th, you'll be able to download it. Vinyl is coming sometime in November, so we're looking forward to that. And there may be more Garrison news in the future, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
We're excited about that. We've got Judas Knife. They have 3 singles out now, and they've got their first show coming up September 19th at St. Vitus. We want to check that out, yes?
Absolutely, that's going to be fun.
We've got Her Head's on Fire.
I think we have a couple split 7 inches, and we're figuring out where the LP is going to be, but you'll hear about it soon enough.
Yes, so search this out online. Use that Google search bar. I mean, come on, let's do this thing. There you have it, folks. Joseph Grillo. Excellent conversation. Many good stories. I'm excited about the Garrison vinyl reissue coming up. Judas Knife is really good. I was listening to that earlier today. That was a perfect description. What did he say? Depeche Mode meets...
Oh, shellac.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was good. Yeah, he's got a lot going on. A wine store, twins. How does he do it all?
My thing is like... navigating liquor licenses in the state of New York is a nightmare. Yeah. Anywhere it's a nightmare.
In other news, Tommy, tell the people about your dream.
Oh, Lord. Okay, so here's what happened. I went to bed. Shit, what was this? Thursday night. I went to bed. Circus Survive was on this. In my dream, the entire band was on the show. We were going to get ready, and this was in like a professional studio, so it has like monitors and like a console, and everybody has like the microphones that like hang down from the ceiling that you can adjust and shit. And Anthony gets there and texts me and says, "Hey, can you help me get stuff out of the car?" And I said, "Of course." And I get out there, and lo and behold, we get shithouse, like really bad. Like he hands me a bottle of something, we start drinking it, and I'm like crap on your neighbor's lawn type drunk. Like I am fucking out of my mind. And I fall asleep on the console. Like I literally, in the middle of the conversation while we are having, like you and Brendan are talking about like guitar pedals, I'm like head on the console, knock the fuck out. I wake up the next day, you call me, and I decline your call with the, as you say, typical Costanza response, which is, they can't fire me if I don't pick up the phone. If I don't pick up the phone call, they can't say you're fired. And if I'm not picking up the phone call, therefore, I am not fired. So I still have a job. So I'm constantly trying to avoid your phone call. That was my dream, was me like ducking your phone calls. And
was I going to fire you in the dream?
Oh yeah, 100%. You were so mad. You were like, you made a big point of like, Tommy, a constant theme in this show we go back to is like my sobriety. And you get fucked up on the air, not only with like when you're supposed to be talking, but with one of the people we should really be focusing on in the group that has, a direct connection with all of us. Like, we grew up with Colin, we grew up with Anthony, like we should be having these conversations. So essentially the entire dream amounted to you trying to wrangle everybody else while Anthony and I are passed out.
So somewhere in your subconscious, you're afraid that I'm going to fire you from the show?
Well, I mean, I don't get paid, so you can't really fire. This is my job to quit, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to fire me, but I always feel like I'm going to do something. Maybe it's not like insane, like get drunk as fuck and like fall asleep, right?
Yeah.
But it's something like, I say something that's not great, and then like you don't catch it during the edit, and then like, because Keith has saved my ass 1,000 times with stuff I've said on here that I'm like unknowingly being like, oh, this is not the smartest thing to say, like being the position I'm in. And, he'll text me sometimes and be like, I cut that part about X. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like I forgot.
Well,
I said
let me get in on this. Now, I wouldn't care about sobriety and all that stuff. Like, that's not what I would get mad at. The only time I get mad is when something impedes in my ability to get the show recorded. That's why we had the little tiff about the technical difficulties a long time ago.
Oh my God. And that
Remember
was
that?
Oh my God. Yeah, with my microphone that was like eBay janky nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I completely remember.
As long as we can do the show and get it recorded, I'm not going to have any problem.
I think that's, you know what? Going back, that's the maddest I've ever been at you.
When
you were like, yo, you have to get a new microphone. And I was like,
oh, you are mad at me?
Oh, yeah.
Ah.
I wasn't even, no, let me rephrase that. I was just upset because I'm like, look, I'm doing my best. I got what you asked me to get. Like, you know me. Like,
no, but you didn't. That was the beef.
Okay, well, I got something.
You didn't do it.
Well, I eventually got what you asked me to get. Christ, like, I don't know what you want from me. So I think with that one, I was so upset, I think, because I'm not used to us being even like a little bit, like our entire relationship is based around jokes and funny stuff. And,
yeah. And now we're tied into this show.
Like very, very fleeting moments of seriousness. Like that's our entire relationship. So like and that's a crazy part of this entire podcast, is that it's our relationship on display. This is what we have done for the last 20 some odd years. Like this is what we've done, is hang out with each other and talk shit. And I'll be honest, I still struggle with, and Keith knows this as someone that edits the show, how to like pull myself back or not say what I'm thinking in the moment. Like, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Like, there's no me outside the show and then me inside the show. Like, I don't have a persona, and I don't do that well. So something I'm working on and something I'm struggling.
Tommy and I are fine. Tommy, there's no firing from the show. Sometimes we have to have conversations, and well, sometimes we have to deal with business now, and we never had to do that before. Like, we have to have like serious conversations about the show and different stuff. And it's weird because that element never existed in our relationship before, but whatever. I mean, I'm committed to our friendship, and I'm committed to us doing this show. So we're going to make it work no matter what. That's it.
I think this is the big thing, and we said this in the beginning. The instant this show gets in the way of our friendship, the show is changing. Like, it's not, we've been friends for longer than the show has been. Like, we've been friends for longer than the amount of months the show has been around in terms of years.
Yes.
Like, so I feel like our friendship is the most important part of this, and That's at the core. Like, I mean, that's what started this whole thing. I have a hard time when I see us butting heads about that. But what Keith always brings to the forefront is the most important thing is that we stay friends and we get to the core of what everybody's really tuning into is like, it's for the fucking music. That's why we're here. Like we're here because we love the same shit. Like we're not listening to this because we're like, I knew so. No, like we love fucking music. We just fucking love it. It's everything we based our entire personas around. It's the clothes we wear. It's the friends we've kept. And I think that's a large part of it.
In good show news, Tommy, are you ready for this?
Let's go.
We have far surpassed. We have sailed right on past 20,000 downloads of the show. Far surpassed.
Jesus.
Yes, we sailed right past it. And we've been heard in so many countries. When I look at the map of the show, it's all lit up, all over the place. International, baby, international.
How about Bosnia? Has anybody heard us in Bosnia?
I'm going to have to double check. Yeah, Africa, the Middle East, Australia, everywhere. Everywhere. So I just want to extend a thank you to everybody who's been with us, everybody who listens to the show, anybody who's listened to the show. We appreciate your continued support. But Tommy, do you know what it's time for?
Oh, God. Is this fucking pop culture? God damn it. You got me fucked.
It's time for Tommy's favorite segment, the Pop Culture Minute.
Okay.
And this is where we discuss the hot topics of the day. Tommy.
Yeah.
Are you ready for the Pop Culture Minute?
Sure.
I'm never getting rid of this segment. I love how much you dislike it. It brings me so much joy. It really does. All right, first up on the list, Milk Crate Challenge. This thing is taking the world by storm. Tommy, have you seen the videos on Twitter, on Instagram, everywhere?
Oh, yeah. I follow a ton of hood shit on Instagram, like hood vines, hood culture.
Hoodville. Have you ever seen the Instagram account Hoodville?
Yes, I have.
They are hilarious.
Dude. Yeah, so anyway.
Yeah,
yes, I have seen those.
So the Milk Crate Challenge, you stack a bunch of milk crates up in a pyramid form and people have to walk from one side to the other. It looks terrifying. It looks dangerous. I haven't seen anybody actually complete it yet.
Have you seen the guy walk to the top, finish breaking up a blunt, roll it, and then walk the fuck down?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that guy...
That is pure talent. Do you think you could do it?
Oh my God, no. My balance is terrible. I've always, like with skateboarding, I've always been bad at manuals. Like I don't have great balance.
I think I could do it because I'm tall and thin. I feel like I could get the weight distribution down. But it looks so scary and painful when you fall from like 3 stories up and you land sideways on a crate.
Yeah, everybody hits their back. Everybody. Like you just slam your back into a bunch of milk crates at a really terrible angle.
Well, it looks fun. I hope to try it one day and end up in the hospital. All right, next up on the list, OnlyFans. Tommy, OnlyFans will be banning adult content, their bread and butter. Now, from what I read, credit card companies are putting pressure on OnlyFans to ban adult content. They're saying it's legalized prostitution. They're threatening to not approve payments that go through the sites. What do you think of this? What is your personal opinion?
I really don't understand OnlyFans other than Mikey Miles has one.
I knew you were going to say
that's the only experience. I don't know. I don't get it. Like I don't.
It is a platform.
Is it TikTok? Is it the?
No, it's like a portal for videos and picture. So many women are using it to sell pictures and videos of themselves. So the controversy is that it's an outlet for women to make money and express themselves and offer this content, and now it's being shut down.
Okay, phenomenal. Go ahead, shut that down. Somebody else will open up. Yeah, there's money to be made. It's like if somebody wants pictures of people's like gross feet or weird shit like that, yeah, like fucking do it up, bro. Like,
and that's what it is. I always read about like feet pics and weird stuff that people are into, but all right, well, let me not judge. I read about these things that people are into that maybe I myself do not necessarily partake in, but look, enough with this Puritan nonsense. You know, if women want to offer that content and if people want to purchase it and it's not breaking any laws, then why not?
I have a hard time with it's two consenting adults
Yes.
in a transaction that's taxed, right? Like,
Yes.
so then what? I don't. Is it, so it's the pressure from the credit card company saying like you're a pornography site.
Yes. Or no, prostitution. They're saying it's prostitution.
Oh, I thought prostitution involved like you actually touch the girl, right? Like I thought that you actually physically had contact with her. So this is like a more of a like a voyeuristic kind of thing, like where you're just watching someone.
Credit card companies have morals all of a sudden?
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean, come on.
I guess I go back to the credit card companies. Like their motive must be they're beholden to someone else though. Like
that's got to be it. Yeah. Someone in power is upset, I'm sure. Or they're trying to hold women back. I don't know. There's some angle to this that we don't quite see that's not good.
Do you think by the time that our kids are older, so like by the time like children that are of this generation are presidents of, you know, Visa, MasterCard, whatever, do you think they'll just be like, shit, like feetsonly.com? Like that's like
nothing will change. Nothing will change. During the hippie generation, everyone was like, yeah, man, once we're in power, everything's going to be cool, man. And like everything will be legal and like everything. And they're worse. They're the worst people. They are the worst people in power.
No, the
right
worst
now.
people. The worst people are that never stopped being hippies. They're the worst.
Nothing changes. Nothing changes.
If you have a fish shirt and you're like 60, like I there's very, very little chance I'm going to have a decent conversation with you.
All right, last up on the list, Donda, the upcoming Kanye album, Kanye West.
I like
he
this
has
dude.
sequestered himself in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and he is living there until the album is complete.
Okay.
How do you feel about Kanye West? I've never been into him. I couldn't name more than a couple songs, but I find Kanye the person very entertaining.
I really like his music. I really like his music.
Do you still listen to the new records too?
I haven't after I really like Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, I like that one. I really like that one. Very ahead of its time, very cool shit. I really like College Dropout. There's a song on there called Family. Has a super good message to it, which is like fucking protect your family. Like the people around you, like I don't give a fuck if you do some fucked up shit. Like you're mine. Like you're part of me. Like I'm taking care of you. Like
how do you feel about Kanye living in Mercedes-Benz Stadium? Do you feel it is helping him complete the album?
I saw that picture. This is one thing where I can actually interject a little bit. He had like a cinder block room with like a mattress on the floor. I dig him. Like I really like. He is very punk rock to me.
Yes.
And he seems punk rock, and I don't know. I can't even put my finger on exactly why.
Like rich punk rock.
Yeah, like he seems like he doesn't give a fuck. Like he legitimately doesn't care.
Why move to the stadium though? What's the significance with the stadium? Do you know?
If I'm being honest, I feel like he really is kind of there might be some type of like mental illness going on with him. Like he's got like some like crazy like egomania kind of thing going on too, where he thinks like everything he does is like ultra important, which it is. Like I mean, people consume it at a pretty good rate, but yeah, I don't know. Like it's so. Where is Mercedes-Benz? Where is the actual?
I have no
arena?
idea. I don't even know. I guess it's in L.A., right?
I feel like it's in Atlanta.
Oh,
I feel like that's. I feel like that's where the center of all that shit is. But like, I gravitate towards hip hop that is. I've sent it to you before. Like those dudes, like Heat Makers and like that kind of stuff. Like that's the stuff I get to. Like where I go, I love this, and I think that's very much what Kanye kind of influenced. And
Mercedes-Benz Stadium is in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, I felt like it was Atlanta. I dig him. Like I dig that he's in the fashion. Like it's not my bag, but at the same time, like for him, it seems like it fits, man. I don't know. Like I like him though.
I'm a fan of his antics, and there are songs I like, but I don't know. I've never listened to a whole Kanye West album. Maybe that'll happen in the future, but that's it.
That's it. Oh,
That's
Lord.
the Pop Culture Minute.
I fucking hate that noise. Like, I can't.
We have discussed the hot topics of the day. We are better for having done so. Don't you feel better, Tommy?
Slightly. I really don't. That sound bed makes me think of, remember Entertainment Tonight?
No, think Ion Springfield.
with Kent Bruckman. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck. All right. Yeah. I mean, I get it, but I at the same time, I don't.
What, the Pop Culture Minute or Kanye?
Kanye. I'm still fixated on that. Like,
no, Tommy, the Pop Culture Minute's over.
We're
done. We're done pontificating.
I apologize.
Well, we're out of time. We have completed another episode of the Northeast Scene, and we are happy to be here with all of you once again. We'll be back next week, and I just want to say thank you again to Joseph Grillo of Garrison for spending time with us tonight on the show. And that's it. So thanks everybody for listening, and until next time.